until we're live.
11 seconds.
That kid chased Ben down the entire.
I know, and yeah.
I'll tell you when it's live though, because it might not actually go live.
Oh, okay.
It's like those videos you see of rich Westerners in India where the children are just
begging for alms.
They were begging for mitzvahs. Bowling for mitzvahs.
Well, I should bring up the podcast topics, huh? Might be a good thing.
I know what we're talking about. I feel good.
Joe's pointing at me. That
I can
probably
tell
means
you what we're
something
talking
good. Hey.
Oh my goodness.
I see some handsome gentlemen.
Look at that.
Succession Wars.
The
It's like
Succession
a-
Wars?
That's the game.
Succession Wars, man.
Except my board
It's
was
like
a
a
little
Is
different.
that I'm
board.
checking Amazon right now.
Is it like a tarp?
Thank you for joining us, folks. We are talking role-playing games, actually.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
How did
so
that come up?
Peter was telling me about this amazing board game, BattleTech
It's
Grand
called Mitzvah
Strategy
Wars.
Game.
Yeah, it's set in the BattleTech universe.
$200 on Amazon.
Whoa.
That's
Well,
really good.
it's too bad your birthday just happened.
Now I gotta wait till next year
Yeah.
to get this amazing.
You have to wait
board
300
game
and.
that I didn't even know existed.
I bet I have it somewhere in my mom's house.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to dig it up.
Okay.
Well,
We're going to
Succession
Peter's
Wars.
mom's house.
It's totally.
We're just talking about.
I've
how
never
amazing,
finished a game.
role-playing
That's
games-
what it took like days.
That sounds like Axis versus Allies.
Yeah.
It certainly does. I remember spending an entire day setting up Axis versus Allies, and then at the end of the day, just not really wanting to play anymore. So we had this beautiful board, and then we just walked away from it.
I'm totally lost, but I want to see how people are reacting to this in chat, whether this is a popular topic amongst our viewers. I imagine it would be.
I should sign into.
The thing is, I hope that there's one dude who's like, we just made his day. Because it definitely made my day to discover that Tim was a fellow BattleTech nerd. And that you'd even heard of Twilight 2000, which is obscure.
I'm bringing my figurines next time. We're gonna put all my Ghost Bear figurines.
Ghost Bear?
One of the clans, man. One of the
Yeah.
clans.
Not to be used with Ghost Dog, Wave the Samurai.
Correct.
Yeah.
Totally different genre.
But for me, it was like all about Wolf's Dragoons.
Dragoons.
And all about the lore, about how where they came from, and how it was about Kerensky. I can't believe I remember all this. It was like General Kerensky's daughter or something like that.
Did you read the fiction, the books?
I read some of the
They
books.
were really terrible.
Yeah,
I
I knew the history. Like, I can't believe how much of the history of BattleTech I know. More than some real history.
If there are any BattleTech fans out there,
Yeah.
please shout your questions.
We want to
out
play
at the
Succession
Q&A
Wars with
section.
you.
Yes. How many players is that?
Well, I mean, you can play one for each house, which was 5. So.
Wow. Oh, all right.
So for the record, you're
Brian has no idea what we're talking about.
pushing your children to this, but you let them watch Star Wars. I just want.
Well, I mean, he's not playing any. He's 4 years old. He's not doing much of anything right now. So except playing with Legos, I guess.
You can't get dessert until you finish your BattleTech.
So you paint that mech figurine.
Should we?
I guess it teaches
let's
them a craft,
start.
right?
Yeah.
Should we actually do it?
Figurine painting.
Okay. It's the week of the 18th, right? Don't we do the Mondays? Or do we do the Sunday?
It's a Monday. Did I put Sunday?
Yeah.
Oh God, my brain is.
This is
fried.
the one Monday where I actually know what the date is for obvious
Yeah, because of
reasons.
I have not-
And Peter should know as well.
I know it well.
Yeah. Are we ready?
Oh, was it your
Everybody
birthday also?
Yes, it
ready?
was.
Yeah.
No.
You didn't know that?
Like, I was sorry,
We
my
used to have the
birthday
same
was.
birthday.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I feel like somebody might have said that at some point.
50% of Engadget editors in chief have this.
The other 50%.
We don't talk
Yeah, I
about the
know.
other 50%. We don't talk about RB.
All right. The only
Is that how he was? Is that how he was chosen? Was it a
Yeah,
birthday
we actually
dish
did try to find someone with the
with the
same
same sign?
Yeah.
You're amazed how long it takes.
Same
for us to
Fröhlich-
love this.
Fröhlicher was like running numerological.
I need a Pisces. God, why my kingdom for a Pisces?
What is your sign?
Pisces.
Pisces.
Yeah, Pisces. Mine too.
The fish.
The two fish.
Two fish.
Mhm.
Red fish, blue fish.
I see where you're going with that. All right, Joe, are you ready? Thumbs up.
How
from
do we
Joe.
how do we sound out there?
There's nobody really
there
here. Can you
anybody?
hear
There's
us?
nobody
Are we
in
there?
chat? Oh, is
It is
another
live.
podcast using a red bar right now?
No, I stole the red bar.
Okay. I guess it didn't go up as early as it usually does.
Correct.
Might be it.
Tass, how do we sound? Are you out there, Tass? Which camera am I on?
Was
I'm looking
the
at this
Chow?
camera.
Is the Chow out there?
No,
Wu?
no Victor Wu
No Victor
yet.
Wu
I
today?
don't think so. Refreshing. Oh, no, I think that means
It's
he's
a
refreshing.
refreshing change from your usual non-RPG talk.
Yes. Just shows an old video. Uh-oh.
What?
Yeah, I'm seeing the new video, Taz. Should be YouTube in code.
What's the safe word? BattleTech?
Mad Cat.
Mad Cat.
Peter knows what I'm talking about, I think.
I might not know.
Not the gaming.
That was the coolest mech with like the curved fuselage.
Come on,
and the
Peter.
2 arms.
Mad Cat.
The Mad Cat.
Was that original?
Man, it's one of the clan mechs.
Oh man, see, I
One of the
didn't
clan
I didn't know as
mechs.
much about the clan stuff because I was more because they advanced their chronology, so I was more like year 3000 stuff than 3025.
Are you in chat, Joe? There's some folks having issues apparently. Up Late Nerds getting an error occurred with static. Oh, Pete is saying that he can hear us.
It's good on my end.
Those are some nice blue suede shoes, Tim.
Thanks. They're going back, unfortunately, because the sole's starting to come up already.
Somebody step on them?
Very disappointing. Nope, just
Did
me.
And drink your liquor out of an old fruit jar?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Oh, we got a screenshot from Taz.
That was kind of it for Carl Perkins, huh? That one song.
Wow, he had a great
I mean,
body of work.
as far as like actual hits go.
Well, yeah.
The song that Elvis. There's a really good Drive-By Trucker song about Carl Perkins called Carl Perkins' Cadillac.
Really?
Because apparently Sam Phillips told them that whoever gets the first gold record will get him a Cadillac.
Yeah.
And Carl Perkins won that bet.
But
obviously.
he did he get the Cadillac?
He got the Cadillac.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. He didn't care about a Grammy because he had his fiberglass Cadillac.
Yeah. We're good?
All right. Let's talk about more things that our viewers probably aren't interested
All right.
in.
Well, let's go ahead. I think some folks are
Yep.
joining us up a bit. Something. All right. I'm going to get comfortable in my fuzzy
Is this
green
for the
chair.
lights?
Yeah. I'm a little. Well, okay. That was.
That's for James.
Thanks, James. Sorry, I'm getting a side chain.
I have
Okay.
my fingernails are orange from the mandarins that
Mm.
John Terry brought.
That's
up.
not. Oh. Should that stuff rub off? Does that mean they're dyed?
Yeah, it's just from the peel.
Orange dye in the peel?
No, orange peels are orange.
All right, let's get going.
That's why they call them
Nature's dye.
Welcome to the Engadget Podcast for the week of March 18th. My name is Tim Stevens. I'm the editor-in-chief of Engadget, and I am joined by 3 of my favorite people.
Oh.
Brian Heater, Peter Rojas, and Joe Pollicino behind the camera. We have new cameras, new sets, new mics. If you've been complaining about the audio, we've been listening very statically, but we've been listening.
Look at these high-end.
You might not have been able to hear us, but we could hear you.
Yes.
We could hear you complaining on our email.
So hopefully we sound a good amount better than before. We've ditched the lav mics, and we have gone with something wholly new.
I would like to point out the fact that those are just sort of 2 fancy pants Logitech webcams right there.
That's the Logitech 920. That's one of the best webcams
Yeah,
you can get.
it'll do
out
the
there.
trick.
I don't know what that one is.
Hopefully.
I'm 10. Oh, it's the 910. 20 is not Mac compatible, says Joe. Close enough. That's pretty good. That's pretty close. So, we're being told the volume's low, Joe, so maybe, I don't know if anything we can do there. But anyway.
Let's start over,
Let's-
shall we?
Do you want to start over? Really?
Yeah, let's start over.
Man, but
Yeah, I know. You said 5 whole things.
I know.
We're still working out some bugs today.
Yeah.
We are. Thanks
Yeah.
for your patience, everybody. Okay. Volume up now.
Hard stop, James. Hard stop.
Steve also said we're out of focus, Joe. I don't know if you can manually focus the thing or.
You
Pete,
got a call from a typewriter.
Pete says we sound nice.
Oh, Pete.
Thank
You
you,
look
Pete.
great, Pete. I
As
like
do
that
other
new
people as well.
shirt. I assume you're wearing a shirt, but I guess that's not actually that safe of a bet.
Arb says we sound choice.
Barb's does?
Arb.
Oh, Arb.
Arb D.
Arb.
McFly. Up late nerds got nothing. That's weird.
Arby McFly.
All right, you still feeling good, Joe? Should we try again?
Yeah, Back to the Future roast beef sandwich.
Let's try again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Engadget Podcast for the week of March 18th. My name is Tim Stevens. I'm the editor-in-chief of Engadget, and I'm joined by some people who are still my favorite people in the world.
Aw.
It sounded almost as nice
Nothing
as the first
is-
time
yeah,
I said it a few minutes ago.
Not
Can we,
opinions haven't
splice
changed
in the other?
since the first take?
It was less authentic sounding this time. We've got Brian Heater, Peter Rojas, and Joe Pollicino's behind the camera this time. We've got a whole new setup, new mics, new cameras, new furniture. I'm in kind of a fuzzy green chair if you're not watching live.
And kind of a
It's kind of comfy.
a fuchsia happening behind us with these new
Fuchsia and
gel,
blue.
I don't want to call them gel lamps. They just have cellophane.
That's a gel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally a gel.
totally gel.
So, man, what a weekend, huh?
Yeah.
Remember?
never forget. Expand #1 and Formation Center.
Yeah, our first expand. I guess let's talk about expand.
You
man.
want to just go right into
Let's just
that?
dig
You
right
don't
into
want to talk about
Expand.
the newsy news that
Yeah.
happened right after
We'll talk
that we were
Expand,
talking about? Like,
'cause it was awesome.
what if people's only source of tech news is the Engadget Podcast?
All right,
So
fine.
Waiting to
Fine,
they're
we'll
waiting
talk
to
about the
find out what
Galaxy
happened.
S4.
Did Samsung release a phone?
There
Yes
was a
or no?
phone, yeah. If you
Okay.
were watching last week, we did have to cut out a little bit early because we had we had to go stand in line outside of the
Rockefeller
Thank
Center?
you, Rockefeller Center. Why can't I never remember the
Or
name of
Radio
that
City
place?
Music
Radio
Hall.
City Music
See,
Hall.
you forgot
It's
it
near
too.
I mean, it
Rockefeller
is.
Center,
It's in
yeah.
the same.
Same
It's
complex.
in.
It's where the
Rockefeller
Rockettes
Center.
perform, and I would like to say there were no Rockettes in the Samsung performance, and I
But
don't know why not.
There was everything else you could ever want out of
every
a press
other
conference.
tacky, terrible
Yeah.
thing that you'd want out of an off-Broadway show did appear.
Did they think they were doing a good job?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. I
Okay.
think there are some cultural differences
Yeah.
Yeah.
at play here.
yeah. This was someone in Korea's grand idea for a Broadway launch for a big device.
It's like somebody in Korea's grand idea of what somebody in America wants.
Yeah.
Like, here's the most American thing we can do.
I really wonder whether it was worth the expense. I mean, they certainly
No way.
definitely not worth the expense,
No
but
way.
but also I don't think that the impression that I have, and I think a lot of people have, is that it's almost like shows a lack of confidence in the device to not make that so much the if it's not, I mean, you shouldn't have to have like a big production around the launch of the phone.
Well, you've got to
If
put
it's
on
a
a
strong-
show, though. I mean, everybody's going to be disappointed if a
But other
executive
people-
comes out and stumbles through a few words.
But other people don't do big productions like that for a flagship device. Does anybody really do anything quite like that, like a spectacle like that?
Well, it's Qualcomm did and Asus did. I mean,
But those
really
weren't
moving in that direction.
But those weren't impressing us either.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and I think that's part of the thing, to put on a giant show like this for what is ultimately, not anywhere near as big a step forward as the Galaxy S3 was over the Galaxy S2. I think that for me was disappointing anyway. To have all this fanfare, all this pomp, all this circumstance for what is ultimately kind of what feels like a half step forward.
But I'm wondering if they're compensating for the device, or they're compensating for the fact that they don't have like a Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos. Like, they don't have one big super charismatic
Sure.
host, so they're
I mean, it's definitely a competitive disadvantage
Yeah.
Yeah.
when you're Samsung or other companies that don't have a CEO or somebody that can come on stage and articulate the device.
Mm.
But I do think that we have seen other companies successfully launch devices without these sort of stunt, driven launches. And I think that if there's one thing I'm confident about, is that Samsung was going to get a lot of attention, a lot of positive attention for the S4 without having to do all that. And I think it actually distracted from. I mean, it's a little bit like the Republican convention when Mitt Romney had Clint Eastwood
yell at a
Right.
chair.
yell at a chair
Yeah.
right before he
Yeah.
went on stage. It's like, it's great. I mean, people were talking, but you don't necessarily need to have something that distracts from the core message, which is the device itself. Which I mean, obviously it's an impressive phone, and
Right.
I think that people were going to talk about it, and certainly we were going to talk about it anyway.
Yeah, and we certainly have, and unfortunately, their misstep there basically stole the message away from the device itself. What they tried to do, of course, was to basically show off the software features of this device, because the hardware itself is really not revolutionary in terms of any other device on the market. It's kind of like I said, not exactly a full step forward.
It tracks your eyes, Tim. I don't know if you saw that
I
part.
don't know that it tracks your eyes anymore.
It knows when they're
adequately
moving off the
than
screen.
the Note 2. Yeah. So that was one of the things I showed, where basically it'll automatically pause the video you're watching if you look away from the screen. It doesn't quite have the eye tracking for scrolling that we thought it might, but you basically look at the screen and you tilt the phone and it will scroll in that regard. It does have some nice stuff for use while you're driving, so it'll read your emails and text messages to you, and you can recite emails and text messages back, which I think is nice. There's a lot of nice functionality in there it was just this kind of hodgepodge presentation to try to cram all those features into this one presentation. I think they would have been better off picking 5 and really making a big deal out of those 5, and then just kind of shoving in the rest.
They could have just issued a press release, and people would have gotten excited about that phone, right?
Well, that's true. Certainly that's true. I think there was a spectacle enough in just getting 3,000 people together at Radio City Music Hall.
Yeah, many of whom weren't in the industry at all, from what we could tell.
Yeah. I know there was, there were tickets given away, and there was certainly a lot. There was 6,000 seats in that place, and it was
no Wi-Fi for anyone.
That was another thing. No Ethernet. Samsung, please, Ethernet for live blog. Come on, man.
But part of it too is that they don't have really one flagship phone in the way that some other companies do. So
this is their.
It's certainly the biggest, but they've got
this
a lot
in the
of
Note,
big
I guess, are
phones,
their
and they've
flag.
gotta
No pun intended, right? But I do think that this is this is their big. This is the device that creates a halo for everything else that they do, and I think that if I were running Samsung, or at least that part of Samsung, that I would really like Tim is saying, I would focus on trying to come up with a coherent message around those features. There are a lot of really impressive new features, the software features that have been added to the phone, and to really emphasize and articulate in some coherent way how those make your life better or easier or whatever. That would be the impression that I would try to take away from that event.
What's not coherent about it? Tap dancing 12-year-old Peter. I think part of the reason why they felt like they had to put on a giant show was the fact that this was the year that they're pulling away from MWC. That they're trying to put as much focus on themselves as possible, and they were making a big stand by doing that. That was going to be one of the big devices of the show, and then they waited for a week after the show to launch their own device.
Yeah, and we heard tales of hundreds of support staff in New York City, either helping at the event itself or helping at the Times Square event, which was kind of going on or started right after the launch event. So they're certainly throwing millions and millions of dollars at this event, and then of course there'll be a lot more marketing dollars to come as the phone actually launches in the U.S. Sometime in the not too distant future.
I think
a lot of money being spent.
I think it's interesting how Ryan Biden's kind of becoming a big.
Yeah,
big spokespeople over there.
Ryan was the first guest on my first Engadget show way back in the day, and he's definitely stepped up a lot. He looked, I've got to say, he looked like he might have been a little unsure of exactly what was going on.
Like they just pushed him out the stage door and he was there.
He was the guy who was explaining the specs, explaining the details, what was going on, and then of course, the very concrete things that he was saying then got spun wildly into these stage presentations.
Misogynist displays.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's definitely
cool.
some subtle undertones of sexism.
It was weird too that they brought a kind of a ringer to host the whole thing as well. That they didn't feel confident enough in anybody on staff to actually have one of their staff members host it. Mm-hmm. They had that guy. What was his deal?
He was the host of some reality show.
Yeah.
Will something or other.
Obviously
not a reality show.
They have to groom somebody. Just invent some guy. You'd be like, hey, this is, Ryan Biden. Hire an actor with great stage presence, and pretend get a real ringer and
I'm saying Ryan Biden's a charismatic fellow. I feel like he could maybe.
He is, but but you could go to casting and get the perfect guy.
Yeah, but why not get somebody homegrown who actually knows a lot about phones, who's been in the game.
That's the natural thing to do. But I'm saying clearly Samsung is struggling in this area.
Yeah.
Hire someone. Make him VP, senior VP or whatever.
Senior VP of handsome.
Executive VP for stage presentations. and just have that guy get up and make him seem super vibrant and excited. And
the only reason why anybody's talking about this is because A, it was so absurd, and B, because if it was at Mobile World Congress, I don't think anybody would.
I think it's totally smart to avoid MWC at this point.
Yeah, but 2 years ago, I can't remember what they did this year, but 2 years ago at IFA, they had this crazy magic show presentation. This isn't totally out of the ordinary for Samsung. They're trying to put a spin on these things.
No, I've definitely been to some awful presentations by them.
Yeah.
But when they announced the Note 2, I thought that was an effective presentation. And that Kanye performed at the end, which got their stunt thing in there. But the core of the presentation itself was actually pretty good, and they did a good job of articulating what was great about the Note 2. And they certainly haven't lacked they didn't lack for coverage or attention.
Yeah, if you're gonna pump a bunch of money into something like that, hire Kanye West
hire
for
Kanye,
God's
yeah.
sakes. At least everybody leaves with a pretty good feeling because they've
Yeah.
seen a Kanye concert. But the phone itself, I mean, it's still a top of the line.
Yeah, I was
phone.
just gonna say we haven't actually mentioned any spec for the phone whatsoever. We
Yeah.
should probably do that. It's a 5-inch device, so slightly larger than the Galaxy S3. 2 gigs of RAM. It's got one of two processors, either the new Exynos 5 octa-core chip, which isn't actually as insane as you think it is. It's for was it 4A9? No, 4A7s and 4 fast cores and 4 not so fast cores, and it switches between the two whether you want performance or whether you want battery life. Or it's got the Snapdragon 600, which will probably be the chip that we have in the US.
Yeah.
1080p display as expected, and it is an AMOLED display.
What's the
it's still pentile.
DPI?
440,
Pentile.
446.
441.
441.
Pentile.
Yeah,
display.
Pentile kind of skews the math a little
It
bit.
definitely
but
does, but it definitely looked cleaner.
I'm
and
sure it's gonna
whiter
look fine.
than
Yeah, I
before.
think that'll look okay.
Yeah.
I think that'll
I think
do
at
the
that
trick.
at that level
Yeah.
of pixel density, the Pentile
I
thing
think so
doesn't bother
too.
you as much.
13 megapixel backside illuminated sensor in the back, 2 megapixel up front, Bluetooth 4, GPS GLONASS, 2600 milliampere battery, which is bigger. How much bigger? 500, so about 25% larger than the previous battery.
And that great
So-
carbon fiber body. I mean, it's just so durable and beautiful. They really clearly spent a lot of time.
Brian alluding to the plastic exterior that is more or less identical to the Galaxy S3 body.
It's a little. I mean, it's sort of unfortunate for them that they made a big point to soup everything else up, and this is what they focused on. But you'd think that they would do something to distinguish.
I
it
think
a
they're
little
very
bit.
much if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they spent I don't know how many millions of dollars to launch the thing. I would have rather they dumped that into their engineering budget to come up with some new solution because they apparently want a removable battery. It must be a very important thing to Samsung.
Oh,
and
that's
I
a
can
great
respect
thing
that.
to have. Absolutely. When we were at South by Southwest, that was the big thing that Samsung was bringing to the table. Is they had this little. They basically rented out a storefront and were swapping people's batteries in and out for the show. So I mean, I think that's a pretty good way to distinguish yourself from the iPhone.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not impossible to make a unibody phone with the battery that comes out, or to make a device that is nicer feeling than the Galaxy S3 or the Note 2 or the 4.
They don't do it because they haven't needed to, right?
Yeah.
The market hasn't demanded that they make nicer phones from nicer materials. They still sold tons of phones. And so I can completely understand their decision not to. I mean, they don't care about people like us. And I think this is one of the things that has been really interesting is seeing how everyone in kind of the tech blogosphere has already come to the conclusion that HTC is not going to sell a lot of the One.
Yeah.
But that is a crime. And the thing I think is funny about that is the implication is that we don't have a lot of power to shift people's minds about things, which, I mean, maybe there's a limited extent to which we can influence purchasing behavior. I think that it's probably greater than we think sometimes. But there really is no reason why the One shouldn't sell like crazy at the same level as the S4. It's that Samsung is, as we know, is going to so much more marketing dollars and also work with the carriers, throw more money at the carriers to get, when people walk into stores. I mean, the people that work behind the counter, they can, they have incentives to push certain devices, things like that, and Samsung's going to spend the money on that.
Yeah, they will.
But is the argument that the One should be selling so many more just based on the fact that it's a nicer looking phone? I mean, I don't think spec wise it's that much better.
I think it's nicer hardware. I think the screen, is arguably better, especially since it's non-pentile.
Right.
I mean, and I think that the things that Samsung is doing with the software, I think, to me, are generally more interesting. I think the Zoe feature I think is great.
HTC.
CC, sorry. And I think that the ultra pixel, camera, I think is another. I mean, the fact that they're rethinking the camera rather than just cramming in more megapixels. I mean, we haven't been able to review the S4 yet, so we don't know conclusively whether some of those issues, if there are any issues or problems or concerns or whatever. I think it's going to be a really good phone. I'd be stunned if it wasn't amazing on some level. But my heart, or my gut kind of tells me that the One is the better of the two devices. That's just sort of my instinct.
Yeah, I don't think the argument should be that they should sell astronomically more ones than S4s. I think it's just that it shouldn't be as skewed as it is.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm
people should
saying.
be paying
Yeah.
attention to
That-
the
I'm
one
saying,
in a way. That
I think we all have the feeling that the one isn't going to sell as much as it deserves in some metaphysical way, that we think that a phone company deserves to sell anything.
I mean, in as far as marketing missteps go, I think calling it the One after they came out with all these other ones was probably a big mistake on their part too. I mean, I think it's probably hard for a lot of people to distinguish that.
Well, I think the thing that's a little bit of a mistake pursuant to that is that when you try to Google for something, like I wanted to look
Yeah.
for a case, and I Google HTC One case, and it's all cases for the One X or the One V or the One S.
Well, I did. I think I googled HTC One v Samsung Galaxy S4 for a comparison, and obviously that screwed things up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that's going to be a huge problem for people that have probably never heard of the One X or the One S or the V. I think the real issue is it's going to be awareness. That when I talk to people, just regular people, like I was showing my cab driver. In fact, I was in San Francisco. I'm going to expand, and like the cab driver saw me take the phone out of my pocket. And he's like, "What do you have?" And I was showing it to him, and he's like, he was an HTC user. He had an HTC phone, and he was like, "I had no idea this was coming out."
Yeah.
He had no awareness. He also had never heard of Engadget, which really bummed me out.
Dude,
But
you got another cab right then.
yeah, I was like, but my point is that HTC is losing the awareness war in a way that, I mean, Samsung, the day after their launch event, this is where they were really effective. Is they had people on the Today Show and all, talking about the phone and carriers promoting it. Yeah, exactly.
How many? Yeah, but how many press requests did you get after the S4 came out from people asking you to do a story about whether or not it was an iPhone killer? Like everybody. I got a lot of media outlets approaching me with that question.
Yeah, for me, Bloomberg wanted to talk to me after the HTC event, but they wanted to talk about the Sony event.
Yeah.
I was ostensibly there to talk about HTC, but ultimately the HTC story got bumped by the Sony event, and so I didn't talk about the phone at all. But I was there specifically to talk about the Galaxy S4 on Bloomberg.
Yeah, they're losing the perception war, and perceptions do govern the reality of stuff. I mean, we're talking about business, and it's all about. I mean, the marketing is about perception, right? About positioning, and HTC is screwing that up. And it's not just a matter of dollars. I mean, I think that
a lot of it is
a big part of it is dollars, but a part of it is, frankly, the way that the company is running itself. And they're, we've all met a lot of really great, smart people there. But I think that culturally, I mean, the company is Taiwanese, and I think that they are having some problems understanding the American market.
Yeah, I think too. I think you put yourself in a bad position when your main marketing focus is that you're better than the other phone versus really sort of coming out and talking up your own features. And that's really what they've been doing here. I mean, around all of their marketing seems to have been, and this was a position Samsung was in a few years ago. They're still doing it a little bit. I mean, they're certainly still comparing themselves to the iPhone, but now we're seeing a lot of ad campaigns specifically about features on this product.
Right.
HTC, on the other hand, their entire marketing campaign seems to revolve around showing up to Samsung events and making fun of Samsung.
Yeah,
That's where all their budget dollars.
And now they're going back and forth on Twitter talking about, I think Samsung said that 4 was greater than 1 on Twitter, and then HTC replied back that plastic is not fantastic. I think something like that. So,
but
it's a mistake for Samsung. I mean, you ignore.
Yeah.
You fight up, ignore down, and so just by tangling with HTC kind of wins.
Mm-hmm.
But it might bode well for Apple that nobody's going after them anymore, or maybe that's just sort of reflective of the fact that they haven't put out a phone in so long.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, I do think that the One does kind of legitimately claim to be the best phone on the market. I mean, even after I think the S4 comes out, it could still legitimately claim that.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I mean, I think it blows away the iPhone 5, especially given the amount of time.
But I do think it's interesting of the way the market shifted that they're not expressly going after the iPhone.
Well, I think that I think it's hard to at this point to get people off of the iPhone.
Yeah.
I think that it's most people have settled into one ecosystem or another, and I think that a lot of the war is going to be within Android to grab market share from other Android users.
And Android's only getting bigger at this point.
Yeah.
And will the 5S be enough to really tide, to stem that tide for another year?
Yeah, I don't worry. It's funny. I don't worry about Apple. I think they're going to sell plenty of phones. It's funny. People are always like, everyone wants to be the first to call the demise, right?
Yeah.
To be the first one to say that they peaked. But they're still selling tons of iPhones. They're still selling tons of iPads. They're doing really well. I think that people that have bought iPhones in the past tend to buy a new one when they're up for a new phone. So I'm not super worried about that. I think that to me, it's really like Rick Martin saying, it's a battle within that within Android.
Yeah, I mean, Apple's going to have the same problem that anybody else is having, that Samsung had, that HTC had, which is, at this point, it's kind of, smartphones are so advanced, it's hard to wow people. You've already got these HD displays,
right?
Giant
and that's
displays.
really, I think, why Samsung was pushing the software features, and I don't think that's a bad way to go. But ultimately, I think that by having so many little features, they just still diluted their message overall.
Well, I think Samsung was pushing the software features for the same reason we just said, to separate themselves from everybody else on Android. When you're working in the same operating system, you've got to bring something to the table on the software front as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the challenge is that the smartphone market is maturing, at least here in the U.S. and Europe. And what can you really say about a phone that it's going to be able to do that is dramatically different than what? I mean, we've seen, the leaps to 4G. We've seen the improvements in screen resolution and things like that. But at this point, for the average person, they're not going to necessarily see like a dramatic improvement in what they had before. I mean, if you go from the 1X to the 1, I mean, the 1 is definitely a better phone, but it's not like a quantum leap. And
Well, yeah, and even if it was, you're not gonna, what difference are you gonna see in quad core versus octo core, or from 1.2 gigahertz to 1.5 gigahertz?
Yeah, I mean, things are definitely faster and more fluid. I mean, you can really see, it's almost kind of like, in terms of screen resolution and in terms of the processing speed and things like that, like and the optimizations that people have done to Android, that we finally everything's kind of gelled, and like the phones are actually really pleasurable to use now.
Yeah.
I mean, Android is really, really, really good now. I think that is maybe the larger challenge for Apple, is that it's kind of like you can kind of go either or. And you're not going to like miss out that much. I mean, they're very comparable at this point, and it really comes down to which ecosystem of services you care the most about,
or just most invested in,
or that's what I'm saying, most invested in.
And if you're starting from scratch, then ultimately there's not a lot to stop. And there's still a lot of people who are still getting their first smartphone. My mother just got her first smartphone 2 weeks ago.
What'd she get?
She got the iPhone 4.
The iPhone 4.
The 4.
Interesting
cheap
choice.
Bargain hunter.
Exactly.
What would you, since if everything's sort of on a relatively level platform right now, and including BlackBerry and Windows in there, what would you, what would you suggest to somebody for their first smartphone, just from a purely operating system standpoint?
It totally depends on the user. For my mother, I think the iPhone made sense.
Yeah.
For a BlackBerry lover, well, I guess they've already got a smartphone. I mean,
but it's like, for a BlackBerry lover, it doesn't make that much sense to go over to BlackBerry 10. It's not like that comfortable to jump.
Yeah,
you don't get to keep your apps.
Yeah,
really.
It's definitely a more difficult decision. I mean, for me, as someone who traditionally likes to be a tinkerer, wants to be able to customize stuff, Android, I think, makes the most sense for me.
I think Apple is going to have to do a phone with a larger screen size at some point. I think the market is spoken.
Well, they just did.
Well, larger than 4
but
inches.
I mean, certainly they're more willing.
They're more willing to do that, but I think.
Are you saying? Well, are you saying to release 2 phones simultaneously of different sizes?
Perhaps they may have to do that at some point. That certainly wouldn't be problematic for them. I
couldn't see them going up to just going up to 5 inches and totally.
You could.
I couldn't without having another smaller phone. Also.
Yeah, no, I think they would do both, but I think that people like larger screens, and I think that the phones the bezels are getting narrow enough, and the phones casings are getting thin enough that you can make a comfortable 5-inch phone. Right?
I get angry at this thing when I see other people's phones at this point.
I think
it feels so small.
It's too small, and I think the market has moved on. I think in a lot of respects, just in the same way that a 55-inch TV was an extravagance.
Yeah.
10 or 15 years ago, and now it's totally plausible. It's not unusual.
Totally fine.
Is it because we're doing different stuff
I have
on?
a 60-inch TV.
Is it because we're doing different stuff on our phone, or is it because the tides have just raised all around?
It's because we're genetically mutated, and our hands are getting physically larger.
I think
superior.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's. I think there's a few reasons. I mean, I think it's easier to type on a larger screen. Mm-hmm. I think that. Because the networks are fast enough, people are consuming more video on their phones than they used to. I think the market for smartphone games is much more mature now, and so people are doing a lot more smartphone gaming than they were a few years ago.
I think a lot of it too is people, getting used to having tablets in their lives. That these things seem all the smaller.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that smaller phones are ever going to disappear. I mean, I think there's going to be a market for a wide spectrum of screen sizes.
Richard in chat was asking whether we had the phone. Indeed, we do. This is the HTC One. I think you've got yours as well, Peter.
Yeah, I love it.
Wonder Twins.
Do you want to hold it, Brian?
Oh, I
Should
just
we
bumped
touch
the
our
mic.
ones?
So really, great build quality. Everybody holds that phone, says it feels amazing.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. That's what I'm saying. It's almost like it's just going to be. It's almost like HTC did what people what we always say, which is like just make it a great device, right?
Yeah.
Like don't worry about like the don't worry about the marketing. We always say,
Right.
we're like just focus on making an amazing device.
Now
right?
all we're talking about is marketing.
And now we're all talking about marketing. But it's almost like if they don't sell a bunch of these, it's almost like
it's our fault.
it's almost like not to say our like the tech. If it's almost like the market's fault, right? It's like it didn't. I don't know. It's. I don't want to lament it before it even hits stores, but it does. It's going to be a real shame if HTC does not succeed with this.
I mean, maybe
They deserve to succeed.
They do. I mean that we've always talked about the great build quality of the iPhone 5, and people who hold talk about the feel of the iPhone 5 and how great it is in the hand. That's why they bought it. Well, here we go. Put your money
maybe
where
I'm
your
the
mouth
only
is.
one in the room who this applies to, but I agree that that's a much nicer phone, but mine's ultimately going to end up in a case anyway. So it's
Well,
I think that
help
probably
it.
applies to a lot of people out there.
But the screen is. I think the screen
Yeah.
is better than the iPhone 5 screen. I don't want to gush too much over a phone, but it is. I mean, look, we all love gadgets, right? And when you have something comes out which like is really great, that's what you wait for, right? It doesn't happen as often as it should.
No, and this is one, and both of you have one. I know Miriam's walking around with one. I mean, this is one that people who write about it are carrying around as their primary driver right now, and that's probably. I mean, that's to my right or your right. I don't know if I can. That to me is. Let me take that over again. I had to move my microphone. But you can get all the good reviews in the world, but to me, the true testament of it being a successful, good device is when the people who write about it are actually using that as a primary device, and that is happening here.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I think we talked enough about. Well, we
No, that was. I mean, honestly, that was the news. That really was the news.
Right. Yeah. Ultimately, it wasn't a huge week in news, but I think we should definitely talk about Expand because that was a huge part of my life for the past
it was
couple
a
of months.
huge week in Engadget tech show. So
In Engadget history, yeah, for sure. Our first
was
ever Expand event in San Francisco, which was pretty amazing. Saturday and Sunday.
I want to turn it over
Amazing.
to Peter to get your perspective on this. But I mean, how, obviously you predate everybody else. They're on the site. How long has Engadget been thinking about doing something like this?
Well, we did our first Engadget event in 2005. It was just a real basic reader meetup. I had a friend who had a store.
Right around the time the site launched, right?
Maybe about a year after
Yeah.
we launched,
I
and
think we still have those pictures online
Yeah.
with you and Ryan and Barb. I think.
Ryan wearing his hat.
Both of you flicking
yeah.
blocks around.
And Mark Purton was at that also.
Sure. You may know him for such things as standing in this room.
Yeah,
before
he
this
was
podcast.
in here earlier. Not that anyone saw that on camera, but and the idea that people would. I mean, we had hundreds of people show up. I thought maybe like 15 people would show up, and we certainly didn't have enough beer for all those people. But the idea that people would come to a meetup for a website was still kind of a crazy idea, and certainly. I mean, I would never go to like a CNET meetup or any of the other things like that. I mean, I read a lot of news sites, but I didn't.
Oh, you're saying at the time.
I don't think even now people would go to a CNET meetup. Maybe unless there was a lot of free stuff being given away. But
I'm sure if you get the right on-screen personalities, you could probably get people out to a CNET meetup.
maybe. I'd like to see them try. But
Gauntlet thrown
yeah,
down.
seriously. Wow.
I think especially now after. I mean, I think people are going to show up to like bash them over the Dish fiasco.
Yeah,
more than
yeah. They
anything
might
else.
want to delay any meetups.
Just
on
in
the cloud.
kangaroo costumes.
Yeah, but it's something that we always wanted. I mean, we always wanted to do a conference and something like really on that larger scale.
Mhm.
And I mean, at the time I was here until 2008, it was just we didn't have the resources, and it was hard to really get to that scale. And
if
so
you're gonna do it, you have to do it right.
yeah, you have to. I mean, I think for anyone who was there would just be able to see that a tremendous amount of work goes into events. And we do gadget events, and even those are like, expand. Our events pale in comparison to the amount of stuff and effort that have to go into, just something the size of Expand. So for me, it was really gratifying to kind of see that realized. And I'm really glad you guys pulled it off.
Yeah, me too.
I'm also kind of glad that I came back a little too late to get stuck with much of the work on that. But I look forward to helping out to working on the next one.
In round two, the idea for this specific event came from Darren Murphy probably about 18 months ago, where he and I sat down and he's like, "Hey man, we should do a proper." In his words, a legit event, as Mr. Murph would be known to say, and so we bounced our ideas around for a long time, and
let's get Froggy Fresh to perform.
Exactly, and we came very close to announcing it at last CES 2012. The ball was rolling. We were thinking about it, but ultimately we just decided we didn't have the bandwidth to do that at that time. So we waited a year. Joey Hinson came on the team to help with the events planning. We brought Barr back as well. We got Kim Murphy on the team as well. And it was really those three individuals who really helped to do a lot of the logistics. And then, Brian and I and a bunch of other folks on the team pretty much gave up a lot of sleep and weekends and nights and such to help to pull the agenda together and to pull all the speakers together. And
the best and the worst thing that you guys did for the show was just saying, we're going to do a show in 3 months or whatever the ridiculously short timeline was there. Like, for better or for worse, we're going to do a show 3 or 4 or whatever months from now.
We've now said that we're going to, for better or for worse, we're going to do the second version, but at least now we've got a little bit more time. That's happening in Q4, so that gives us a little bit of leeway.
Yeah, we have a little more lead time.
Yeah, this was really, I mean, it was interesting because to us it felt like a proof of concept in a lot of ways, but it was a proof of concept that went as well as you possibly could expect a show like this to go.
I mean, on Saturday it was absolutely packed in there. Really, really healthy crowd. So much great stuff on the floor. There was the Exobiotics exoskeleton,
Da Vinci
robot. I did
surgery
in a $1 million robot machine thing, which you can't do every day.
If you're a surgeon,
unless you're a surgeon,
robot surgeon,
then you're probably getting paid pretty good to do that sort of thing.
They actually had to pay to use
right.
it. So,
the prototype version of the BRD Redshift bike, they literally rolled that out of their garage and slapped some body work on it and rode it across the town to be there, which is cool. Test rides in a Tesla Model S.
I was talking to Jay at AOL about the test drives. I think he took a test drive on Sunday, which the worst. It was St. Patrick's Day and there was a marathon happening outside. I'm actually amazed that anybody showed up on Sunday at all. It's also a beautiful Sunday.
A beautiful weekend overall. Yeah. And Fort Mason Center was absolutely gorgeous. Just beautiful views.
Closest land point to Alcatraz.
Yep. So if you're going to
pretty equidistant from Bay Bridge and Golden Gate,
you'll probably wind up at Expand. I'm surprised we didn't have more convicts there, actually.
Well, that's been decommissioned for about 50 years.
I didn't know that, actually. And of course, the party on Saturday night, which I wasn't expecting to be as absolutely ridiculously amazing as it was, but they rented probably 60 classic arcade machines. We're talking 6 Miss Pac-Man machines.
I was as we were
Defender.
as we were walking into the event, I walked past my friend Jeff, who was doing social media for the show, and he said, "Do they have the Star Wars game?" I said, "Yes," and I've never seen him run that fast. They had they had 2 of the Vector Star Wars games.
I love that game.
And they had about 4 of the original Tron games as well. Joust
and a DJ and some weird lighting. Oh, the thing that I didn't. DJ Fresh Jeff.
Chevy Fresh Chevy Jeff.
DJ Chevy Chase. That's what I was looking for. The thing that really impressed me about it, I didn't realize until I got there, was that they did you end up getting by that thing at all?
No,
I was asleep. I blame you. Yeah, I wanted to be asleep. But they had these 2 large screens with all the top scores on it, which
that
I
was the best
no
part.
idea how they were doing.
There were people 4 deep at Street Fighter 2 competing to set, to beat each other and to set new scores. Same thing for Tetris. People were walking from one
Jam
Tetris
was
to
crazy
the next
fast.
machine.
Yeah,
people were high-fiving each other. It was just like being in an arcade in 1992. It was totally awesome. So
with beer, it was like
with a lot of beer.
Do you remember the Foot Clan from the first Ninja Turtles movie?
I do.
It was like that.
I do,
but without crimes.
Of course, we would not in any way encourage any sort of.
But the party was not the highlight of the show, was it, Tim? Maybe it was for you. Might have been for you.
The party was pretty awesome.
What about the great conversations we had on stage?
No, the party was pretty great.
You got to talk to Mark Rayburn and Chris Anderson.
Yeah.
Garage guys.
Yancey Strickler, co-founder of Kickstarter, kicked us off. He was basically our keynote speaker
He
that
was our
morning,
Kickstarter.
and he gave this amazing presentation, just kind of going over some of the greatest hits of Kickstarter, that ended with this like almost tear-inducing footage of things being machined out of aluminum that was on Mr. Rogers or something like that.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to then follow and walk out and actually talk to him.
You took your sweater on and
I did. I rode the little train in, and it was great. And then on Sunday we had this amazing robotics panel where we had people from Boston Dynamics, from
3D Robotics,
and
Willow
Garage. Thank you. And they all individually gave short presentations with demos, and then we all just came out and talked about robots.
It was funny. We had this backstage area, and when both Chris Anderson and Mark Rayburn were on there, all the editors walked up and walked towards the stage, crowded around because everybody wanted to see those videos.
Yeah, we were all watching from behind the stage, and it was fantastic. All those great videos of Big Dog and all the prototype machines from Boston Dynamics. We saw trailers of all that stuff. It was great. So that was great. Talking with Julie Ehrman about the Ouya was fantastic as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, well, there were a couple highlights. One was watching my mom use the Z board.
That was
on the electric skateboard.
I can certainly see.
Also, I think the best of all possible worlds was watching all of these super smart people from really different companies, really excited to meet each other.
Yeah.
Michael Lane from Liftport, the space elevator guys, which that panel was great, the space panel, but he came up to me on day one because he just spent 2 days there just walking around and looking at stuff, and he came up to me and he said, "You have to introduce me to Yancey Strickler. Like, you have to." He was talking to him backstage for about an hour, just nerding out about stuff. Bob from Microsoft, Bob Heddle.
Bob Heddle, yep.
I know. Microsoft Bob. I know. Read the comments on that post. Said that he had gone. He was talking to the MakerBot people about maybe there's something there. They showed off the amazing new SDK stuff they're doing.
Yeah, Connect Fusion.
Yeah,
3D scanning.
3D scanning. So
they did 3D scanning me, which is cool.
Makes sense that they would want to partner with somebody like MakerBot.
Favorite conversation that I was eavesdropping on was between Daniel Wilson, the author of Robopocalypse, and Mark Rayburn from
Daniel
Wilson, and Mark Rayburn from Boston Dynamics, talking robot maker, apocalypse author. And they were just geeking out for about 20 minutes, just talking about robots.
Yeah.
That was ominous and awesome.
And then Insert Coin was.
Yeah, we had our I guess 9 of the semifinalists made it out,
10,
and then amazing demos. Ziphius was the winner, which is like a semi-submersible UAV sort of thing with a camera on there.
2 cameras,
one
above, one below. I learned a lot about live demos at that show. I learned some important lessons on that front.
Not so easy, is it?
But that was really fantastic. Kind of emotional, watching all these people.
Yeah.
With these projects.
Some people traveled from a long way
Ziphius
away.
came from Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, everybody was really excited about it. And I think, even although I was going to say 2 people, but really only one team won, they took home both prizes. But
they absolutely
I think everybody came away with a lot. I think a lot of people, they got a lot of press out of it. They got a lot of eyeballs, people walking
and
up.
the judges too. I mean, we both spoke with Gerard, who was one of the judges from Lunar, and he's overseen the creation of top shelf devices for Apple, HP, and he was really moved by some of these hack together projects that these guys showed off, and some of them the judges seemed to like the Smart Lock the most, which was basically a device that clips on over your
Smart knob.
Excuse me, clips on over the doorknob. I should probably stop.
That was a surprise to me. That was kind of. I'm not going to say the runaway. It was 2 out of 4, but.
Right.
Far and away.
The basic idea is you'd be able to unlock the door remotely. The idea being this would be great for realtors. I think they liked it because it was the one that had the most practical, retail applicability of all
Yeah,
of those.
it was tough because it was practical, but also kind of niche when you really get down to it. But I think people like the Ziphius A because it was just the most exciting, and B, it was
bright yellow.
Yeah, it was the
looked
most
really
final.
cool.
It
Yeah,
did look very
exactly.
cool.
It looked like it looked like they could have just sold it at the show right there.
They probably could have done a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I know that the Z-Board dudes had a pretty good weekend of sales anyway.
Yeah, Make a Play was really fantastic. You know, a lot
Yeah.
of people were rooting for that one as well. It was just a little puppet show. The thing that I didn't realize until actually that first demo was that you can not only record the puppet shows, but you can take that file and send it to people with another Make a Play, and they can play it out, which I think is pretty fantastic.
You could take your Make a Play with you when you travel, and you can make plays for your kids.
I think that was a tough thing, is that it wasn't as clearly a marketable product as the other. But
Right.
I think everybody gets excited about stuff that really kind of fosters imagination.
Yeah, it felt like Little Big Planet come to life, more or less. You could make your own little play
Little
with
sock
your own little
puppets, yeah.
puppets, and it was very cute. But amazing stuff. They all got great exposure. We'll have to do a post tracking them to see how they all do, because I think they all launched that Monday. So hopefully they'll all have great success, and hopefully we'll be able to give a little bit more warning for the next one in New York here this fall. And
I mean,
get,
keep in mind this was
get all
from
more submissions.
hundreds of candidates. You know,
Yeah, I
this is
think
the
we.
10, so.
Yeah, I can't remember how many hundreds. We got quite a few submissions. in.
Yeah, so and this was, and I think all of them would have been, you know, I would have been happy if any one of them won.
Yeah, and of course, great conversations with DJ Spooky, who came out and played a Sunday set, and then you spoke with him on stage,
Yeah.
and just amazing dude. Whenever we talk with DJ Spooky, it's like I am always.
Yeah.
I found out that he was a professional bicycle racer,
Yep.
which just kind of blew my mind.
Yep.
Sponsored by Bianchi. Always learning something.
Kind
new.
of surprising, but kind of not really.
No,
kind of like, yeah,
just one of those
I
dudes like,
guess.
oh yeah, you're in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Olympics. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's basically
I
like
can
Forrest
see
He was in the
Gump.
Olympics?
No,
No.
I'm just saying. If you were to say that to me, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Because that would have surprised me.
You know, he forged the fire for the Olympics. He stole it from the gods. Actually.
So I think what we're basically saying, we should probably stop gushing now about our own thing. But ultimately, it was
yeah, watch the next Engadget show. For that.
It was a pretty great weekend. If you came out to it, I hope you had fun. If you did not,
If you didn't, the next one's gonna be better.
the next one's going to be probably cooler, because now we know what we're doing, and
Now
it's
other
gonna be
people
good.
know what we're doing.
The bar, we got to raise the bar.
Yep.
Like, that's
gotta
always
raise the
got to be.
barb.
Which means Barb's got to get some platform shoes, I think, is how we get
Raise
raise
the
the
barb.
barb.
Yeah.
Raise the barb. It's going to be great. So sometime Q4, maybe November,
Possibly.
maybe New York City, maybe at a
No,
convention center
definitely
near
New York
you.
City. I think. That,
Yeah,
that
definitely.
even-
All right, we didn't talk South by last week because you weren't here, and
Yep.
Peter and I
'Cause
didn't
you know
really
why?
know what was going on.
Because
so.
I was in Austin at South by Southwest. That's why. That's what was. Oh
Tell-
no! Wait, no, I was in San Francisco because it
Tell
was
us,
Thursday.
tell us about South by.
Oh man, I was telling Darren that if
Regale us with tales of
South by
Austin.
Southwest was a city, I would move to that city. I would probably, you know,
It's more of a carnival atmosphere than
get
a
sick of
city.
it after a couple weeks. but
Yeah, I would think that'd get pretty exhausting.
it was pretty great. It's a really nice combination. The thing that I didn't realize until I was watching one of the keynotes is that Interactive is actually 20 years old, which is kind of shocking to me because it seems like something that's really kind
How
of.
old is South by itself?
It's a little older. It's a little older than that.
Yeah.
But it definitely seems like something that didn't really start gaining traction until last. I don't know. Well, I would say 7 years actually seems like a good
Since-
marker because
yeah.
Twitter really
Yeah.
might have been what
That's
made it what it is now. I mean,
Yeah, Twitter was definitely as far as I can remember, the first blowout startup success.
and now
to come
everybody
right
goes
out of
back
Austin.
every year and tries to find the next
Mhm.
Twitter.
Actually, it was the first one. It was actually Flickr. Was the first
Oh,
one.
Flickr was
okay.
the-
There
Flickr
you
was
go.
the first
Yeah,
Twitter.
I remember.
Yeah.
All right.
I started going in 2003, 2004.
Okay.
So.
So obviously it ends up being primarily a software show. I mean, it's kind of turned into an app show.
Yeah.
Most
But hardware definitely had a bigger presence. I mean,
Yeah.
the last few, I mean, when I started, there's virtually no hardware at all.
Yeah.
So now it's like great that there actually is some of that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really cool what you end up seeing launch there because obviously, like, Samsung's not going to wait for South by Southwest to launch something, but you're seeing a lot of these really interesting outside companies. One of the it wasn't launched there, but far and away one of the biggest hits of the show was Leap Motion, who really, I mean, I don't think anybody anticipated it, and I think a few of us were actually kind of surprised. Ended up having kind of the big keynote. I mean, it went. I think the second day we did live blogs, we did like literally 3 sitting in the same seats back to back to back, and it went Leap Motion, Elon Musk, and Al Gore, which seems a little lopsided, but they ended up being a huge hit of the show. People got really excited about it, and not even gesture based. It's just sort of motion control for your PC.
Yeah, which is definitely going to be a big thing this year and next year.
Yeah. Like, obviously, Microsoft's trying to get into that with Kinect for PC.
Yeah, what Microsoft announced at Expand wasn't really so much anything that will make the Kinect work better with your PC. Basically, is a set of tools that will allow developers to write apps that will work better with Kinect on your PC. So it's basically giving the tool set to the developers to make these apps better. But they're certainly not the only player in this game, as we saw with Leap, and that we'll see some other options that will be cheaper, and we'll probably see some better software too that just uses your webcam and your laptop to do this kind of thing.
Leap is I don't know off the top of my head, but the Leap controller is incredibly cheap, and it's really, really small.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's obviously can't see something out of a podcast, but it's really about that big, and I'm amazed at the detail.
Tauntaun sized, I think.
Tauntaun?
Right.
Oh, Tauntaun's much bigger.
Okay, Yoda, somewhere between a Yoda and a midichlorian.
I'm saying if you were like stuck on Hoth, you probably couldn't crawl inside it for warmth.
Making a joke that 3 people in this room.
Yeah,
actually,
I was gonna say that's very obscure.
Yeah, it's like a like a young Jawa.
Okay. Perhaps 1 inch by 2 inches.
But the
rather obscure joke that we're making.
Yeah,
now.
it's about a quarter of a cubit.
Quarter of a cubit.
Yeah. It's about half a parsec.
Moving along.
Parsec time or space?
Parsec is a unit of space.
No.
It is.
It's up for debate in the Star Wars universe.
Right, but the way that he did it was because he was able to travel closer to the black hole,
Yep.
therefore risking his ship more.
That's some extended universe crap right there.
Which therefore makes it a unit of measurement, but the shorter the distance, the riskier the flight. So
that
therefore
was
he
something
was
that
talking
one
distance.
of the like extended universe novel writers, I'm pretty sure, came up with.
Probably.
Like George
It
Lucas
does
did not
explain
write.
Trying to retcon that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Canon, man, it's canon now.
It is canon now, and I'm impressed that a Star Trek fan knows that much about a parsec. No, but it's about it's about a parsec large, and it's capable of picking up an amazing amount of resolution. Like it can pick up every finger on your hand, and I think what's kind of interesting that they're doing here. I actually talked to Bob Peddle a little bit about this at Expand, but one of the differences they're trying to make here is the difference between natural motion and gesture. So a lot of Kinect is really gesture based. So it's almost like the analogy they were using is it's almost like learning sign language to speak, versus just doing some like Minority Report, just moving your hand across and having it move that way. Also interesting is that the hardware size really isn't the limitation at this point. I mean, they're fully capable of the next few years of creating a embeddable device. In fact, they told me at the show that by year's end we're going to start seeing it embedded. I think is it ASUS or is it Acer? One of them is partnering with Leap Motion right now to embed it into.
ASUS comes to mind.
Yeah, I think it's ASUS. But yeah, so they were a big hit. MakerBot had a really strong presence. They did. I was we were watching the keynote by Brie Pettis of MakerBot, and the minute he stepped off stage, people started getting his autograph and taking pictures with him. And yeah, their big thing was a 3D scanner. Was the announcement that they're working on a 3D scanner. The company line was, we were so excited about this that we couldn't wait to tell you, but it's pretty clear that they realized that everybody else is trying to get into that space, so they want to get out in front of that.
Yeah, I mean, we had the Kinect Fusion software for scanning through Kinect. One of our Insert Coin contestants was a 3D scanner as well.
Moidles.
Which
that's how they pronounced it, Moidles.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it worked pretty well. I got a demo of that from the show floor at Expand. And it feels like last year 3D printers kind of were the cool hot thing, and this year they'll continue to be. The costs are going to go down, and the quality is going to go up. But this year,
the entry point needs to go down.
Right, and I think it will.
Yeah. But I mean the entry point into using technology.
Right.
The 3D scanner.
Yeah, and that's where the scanning comes in.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll see some more tools too that make it really easy to modify these 3D maps that you get.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because you're really getting to a point. I mean, if you have one of these 3D scanners that not only do you not need to know CAD, and obviously you can sort of scan things around the house if you want to. Scan a knob for your oven or something like that. But if you're a sculptor, for example, you can actually create these things. You can actually make a model and scan that model. And they mostly work the same way. I mean, I know that the Moidles thing and the MakerBot work in very similar ways, which is essentially there's a platform that spins around and 2 lasers that are shooting on it, and it kind of creates this dot matrix of points, and then it maps that out on the computer. But that was a big hit of the show. We mentioned Elon Musk was there launching they were launching a new Tesla store in Austin.
Mhm.
So he had a big presence at the show.
Did you talk about SpaceX at all?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was right after the Dragon had launched. So he talked
that's
about
right.
the kind of some of the hiccups with getting the solar panels out there.
Google shoes.
Google shoes were a weird thing that happened there. Google, obviously the big talk of the show, Google wise, was Google's other less known wearable, Google Glass. But they showed off these shoes at the show, which are not going to be commercial products. This was just kind of them having fun with hacking, and the idea was
Like that light bulb they showed off at I/O 2
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, the idea was to just sort of create shoes with different personalities. So, in the accelerometer, gyroscope had their own homebrew microcontroller board on it, and as you're doing different things, they talk to you, they respond to you differently. So they can either, if you're sitting down, they can either tell you to get your butt off the couch and run around, or.
Just what I need.
But again,
That sounds awesome.
it is.
Just what
But
I
yeah,
need.
I mean, again, Google's probably not getting into the shoe business anytime soon.
No, I don't think so.
And then Google Glass was really interesting because again, this was actually out of that main keynote room, off on the side somewhere. And the reason why they did that was because it was really focused more at developers than at the public. And I don't know if anybody from either Google or South by Southwest was really expecting, since this was a developer facing event, not to have a lot of people there. Obviously, the room was packed.
Mhm.
They showed off a few new interfaces for it. They showed off New York Times, Gmail, all sort of keeping with the same theme, which is let's make this as unobtrusive as possible. Let's
Yeah.
make sure you can go on your daily life, and if you look up, you can see your email, or you can see a headline and have it read to you. Interesting though, getting some of the feedback from the developers. They had a few Q&As at the end, and one of the developers kind of very aggressively got up and said, you haven't showed us anything revolutionary here, and just a round of applause in the room when he
Wow.
said that. But Google's,
Isn't that up for the developers to do?
well, that's the
Yeah.
whole, I mean that's it exactly, and that's why Google would have an event like that at South by Southwest. They're
Yeah.
clearly trying to romance people to create the killer app for this platform.
Yeah, they did have those developer days. I think they were at the end of February. I think that they had one in New York and one in San
Yeah.
Francisco for those who pre-registered, and those are all locked down under NDA. So presumably, whatever comes out of that will be. I'm guessing we'll see that stuff at I/O. But it really hasn't been a lot of talk about Glass. I'm guessing at this point, Google's on full lockdown for I/O, and I'm guessing we're going to see some cool stuff then.
The thing I want for Glass is the ability to manage it from a web browser. Because installing apps from Google Glass will be a real pain.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty clear in the demo that the bugs with the UI haven't been worked out. In order to get from one thing to another, you've got to scroll through a tremendous amount of things. I mean, there are some controllers on the side,
Yeah, there's a touchpad on the side.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
also kind of look up and down.
but you
and
still
talk
have to
it.
it's like going through a photo gallery and like flipping through every single photo to get to what
Yeah.
you want.
Well, that's why I'm saying you have to be able to configure.
Yeah.
You configure. And when I tried out Glass, I guess it was last month, I did ask about some of the stuff because it kind of has Google Now incorporated into it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that flew by was like stocks, and I was like, well, I don't really want to be able to have to like flip through a page like that I'm not going to use because I don't care about tracking stocks like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it sort of just automatically generates this stuff based on your profile, and it's like they really need to. I mean, this stuff can be figured out. I mean, think about how far they've even come with Android in just a few years. I mean, I can
Right.
imagine like Google Glass 2 or 3 years from now being a lot more sophisticated in how
Yeah.
you use it and manage it and all that stuff.
Yeah, and obviously, you should be able to kind of configure what you want from the ground up. You shouldn't wait for it to learn what you're looking at, what you're not looking at.
Yeah.
And can you imagine what a problem bloatware could be on something like that? I mean, if things were, if you were unable to uninstall something, what a pain that would be.
Having to scroll past my VCW every time when you're trying to get to your
Yeah,
podcasts.
exactly. Yeah, VCast music, because
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
if the whole thing,
NFL Mobile,
if-
all of our favorite apps we're listing off here.
if the whole thing is about not it being unobtrusive, then you shouldn't have to scroll through 10 things to get to the thing.
Dude,
you
just
want.
root it.
Oh man, yeah.
Yep.
There's going to be some interesting applications for that.
Yep.
And another heads-up display that not really heads-up display. Really, it's nothing at all like Glass. That we got information on this week was Oculus
Another thing you
Rift.
wear on your eyes. Huh? It's pretty good, right? We can go back
Sure.
and re-record that.
Let's do that again. Can we do that again, Joe? Can we do that again? Joe's giving me a thumbs up. I'm kidding. I don't really want to do that. We sent pretty much everybody who knew anything about games on our staff out to Oculus HQ to talk with Palmer Luckey and talk with the folks at Oculus and talk to the folks at Valve about the Oculus Rift, which is getting dangerously close to shipping their dev units to the Kickstarter backers. And looking, like finalized hardware, when we tried it out at CES just a couple months back, it was still a pair of ski goggles with gaffer tape around the side.
Ska goggles.
And now the developer
I'd buy
unit,
Ska goggles.
Oh, yeah, checkers on everything.
now it's actually made of plastic, no more gaffer tape. The headband now says Oculus instead of saying Scott, and it's a larger display now. I think they went to a 7-inch just because I think it was a little bit. I feel like those are more available to panels, but it sounds like they're actually going to go back down to I think it's 5.8
Yeah,
inches.
it's like wearing a tablet on your face at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like taking an Nexus 7 and strapping it onto your face. But we got a lot of great hands-on demos, a lot of great video. We were able to get some pretty good sample footage from it as well, because ultimately it's just one LCD that's split in two with two circular images projected on there with convex lenses that then take that and kind of bend it and create the illusion of a spherical shape.
It's really fascinating to see that in the videos because I mean for reasons you just said, that's something usually you can't just take a video like these goggles usually just can't take a straight video of it looks like. So we've got some really interesting footage on there.
Yeah, great conversations with Palmer, who's kind of the guy who came up with.
What is he, 24, 22?
I don't know, man, but he's
makes me feel bad
quite
about
young,
my
anyhow.
choices.
But he claims that he has the world's greatest collection of heads-up displays and wearable displays, and he's challenging anybody to basically come up with something better.
Yep.
But
he also
just
has
talk about
the world's worst neck cramp.
Perhaps. But he talks about how he kind of reverse engineered a lot of that stuff, took them apart to see how they work, and then come up with something that's just kind of ingeniously simple compared to all these other systems that have come before.
Realizing that you didn't have to spend money on two different panels.
When I was in high school, I was a computer salesman, and part of the store was these two VR pods. They were the ones you would have seen in the 90s, the big like red ones. Pterodactyl was one of the games, and then there was another game where you walked down a hallway and you shot stuff.
I think it was called walking down the hallway shooting stuff.
I think that was it. And I was the guy basically who would crank on the headset onto people, and then I would take the alcohol swab and wipe it down afterwards. It was a really great job. That's what I'm saying. But that stuff was incredibly primitive. It was based on 386 hardware, and the glasses were these massive things that weighed a ton, and they had a big tether cable that ran down to the, a long, long way from there. And these are very, very light, very comfortable.
But even even the Sony, what is it, the PR or P2 or whatever it is, PR2 or something?
I think the P2.
Even those things have two different displays on them. I mean, they're literally just two TVs in front of your eyes with, slight differences.
And I'm curious how that works because, my right eye is much worse than my left eye. And there are lenses that you can swap out to adjust the focus point of the display. And you can move the display in and out as well, but you can only, move the single display back and forth. I'm curious to see if I can get both eyes in perfect focus to work out.
You played around with it, right?
I did, only for a couple of minutes to CES, just to do a couple of their demos, and it's having spent a lot of time playing VR. I was surprised at how impressed I was. I expected to be like, whatever, VR. I was there 20 years ago.
Yeah, we there was a panel at South by with Palmer was on it. There was another what was the name of the gentleman who was on our Expand panel?
Is it,
he was
Nate? Was it Nate?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Nate Mitchell?
Yeah, Nate Mitchell was moderating it, and for obvious reasons, it kind of became this Rift love panel. But apparently every developer who's ever played around with it is incredibly excited about the potential.
Yeah, I think it's what we've, as a gamer, it's what we've always wanted, and it's also incredibly cheap. I mean, it was $300, I think, was the Kickstarter amount, and it replaces a giant 24-inch LCD, or two, gamers would like to have big, beautiful LCD panels that cost hundreds of dollars.
I'll believe that. I'll believe that when I see it.
Yeah,
They
me
told me
too.
about this about the Sony that you don't have to buy an HD TV because you've got it in front of you.
Well, yeah, but it's not like you can play games on the Oculus and on the Move monitor at the same time.
We'll see.
I'm stoked for it. I'm going to wait for the production, or an actual retail-friendly version and a little bit more game support before I jump in. But I'm pretty excited.
I mean, obviously, obviously everybody at Oculus and a lot of these developers think that this is kind of, broadly, this and other devices like it are the future of gaming. But I'm wondering if you could see this one specifically being anything but kind of a niche device for hardcore gamers.
Yeah, it's hard to say. The big question will be console support, and we did ask about that, and they said that there's nothing stopping it from having console support, but I just don't see Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo supporting any third-party systems like this.
They're not going to.
It's got to have some sort of...
Oh, yeah.
Maybe... No, I don't think that's got the horsepower. It's got to have 60 frames per second interlaced footage, I think, which would be a little tricky to do at that resolution for the Ouya.
But a lot of these things start off as PC first anyway. I mean...
Less so. I mean, I would love to have this on my Xbox or my PS3. I would use it 10 times more than I would on my PC. But I just don't see Microsoft or Sony allowing it, because it would need to have some way of communicating to the console to have the head position tracking, all that stuff. But I can definitely see Sony and or Microsoft doing their own thing if it's a success. Sega went down that route. They had a VR headset they were going to produce. They killed it kind of at the last minute. It was going to be for the Sega CD back in the day. I definitely think that Sony and or Microsoft would do something just like this.
I don't know. It'd be like if they got into motion controlling after the Wii came out.
It'd be very much like that, indeed.
I've just got this image of you in my head now, sitting in front of that giant, beautiful TV you have in your house, but wearing VR goggles and not paying attention.
My wife's shaking her head at me the whole time.
I didn't want to say that part of it. I was definitely in the.
And the dog sitting there being completely ignored the whole time.
They've got their own goggles in this scenario.
Oh, man.
Everybody in the house. Everybody on the train.
So many goggles.
So
many goggles. We got some questions. We feeling good about the Rift. Any final parting thoughts?
Are they about? I don't know. I'll take any Skoggle related questions. I think Peter will as well.
Ska goggles or Skoggles?
Ska goggles. The Skoggle.
There's Skoggles, which are ski goggles, and Ska goggles, which are goggles for ska.
They're both called Skoggles, but one is Skoggle with an A.
Speaking of ska, have you listened to Tokyo Ska Paradise?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really good. Really, I think it's pretty good stuff.
Big band ska.
No, not so much. I'm kind of getting back into it.
Weren't they doing like a lot? Were they the ones doing a lot of like the Zelda theme and stuff like that? I think they were doing some gaming.
I think somebody from, I don't know if it was the full band, but I think somebody from the band. All right. Questions from Up Late Nerd on the Twitter. Robert asking, why does it seem Google apps feel better on iOS than on Android products? That's a pretty good question. Peter, you want to tackle that one?
I'm not sure that's totally true.
Well, I think the Maps app looks and feels better on iOS than on... I don't know. It's not functionally better, but the aesthetics are cleaner.
There are some default things in iOS in terms of elements and things like that, which some people prefer. But I think that the Gmail app on Android is I think it looks better than, and certainly functions better than the Gmail app on iOS. I mean, they have different functionality, but I think Google has definitely improved the look and feel. But for the most part, I would say that they're relatively comparable at this point.
Do you think developing for one or two pieces of hardware versus developing for 8 million pieces of hardware makes a difference?
I don't think. I mean, assuming that we're talking about apps that are 4.0 and up. I would say that Google has done a lot to improve the design or to harmonize the design, even across both platforms. I mean, and I think it does come down to some preferences. Some people don't like Hollow, which is the kind of standard UI stuff for Android, and some people prefer the sort of standard elements in UI in iOS. I do think that in some respects, a lot of those standard elements in iOS are starting to seem a little old, and I think it's definitely due for a refresh.
Hopefully, Johnny Ive can bring that to the table.
Yeah.
Question from Lucy from YouTube, our first YouTube question ever, because we're on the YouTubes now if you're watching live.
Also our first lady viewer, probably.
Lucy's asking, how do you think the HTC One has improved? I'm guessing compared to things like the One X before and other devices. I mean, ultimately, it's kind of along the same lines in terms of the design language and the feel, but it's just, the next step of quality. And of course, it's the next step in terms of performance, next step in terms of resolution, everything else. So I think it's very much in keeping with HTC's design language and their overall, look and feel, but just, the next step.
Yeah, I mean, the fit and finish is better. The Sense 5 is a lot more, I guess, thoughtful might be a good way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
The transitions and animations are better. The fonts and icons are improved. I mean, they've definitely made everything that was in the 1X and 1X Plus and definitely improved it.
Avro on Twitter saying that we need to learn how to say Z10 and aluminium. How do you feel about that?
Well, no, we're not in England. Or Canada, I guess.
HTC?
HTC.
No, that sounds awful. Yeah. There's a reason why we threw all that tea off that boat.
Robert on Twitter asking, with the schedule as busy as yours, do you see yourself using Google Keep in your tools organization? That's just a good question. I spent maybe 30 seconds playing with Keep. Didn't really feel like it's something that I should give up Evernote for. I mean, I don't use Evernote a lot, but I don't see what Keep's got going other than it's integrated with Google Drive.
Yeah,
Did either
I've
you
tried,
spend any time with it?
Well, I don't feel compelled to use it.
I haven't.
And I'm a Google user for a lot of things. So.
Yeah, I've tried so many of these organizational apps, and I just can't integrate them in my life. That's my own. I realize that's my own shortcoming. It's not.
You're out of time.
With the apps.
Don't have time.
The only one I use Evernote for some stuff, but I mainly use Simple Note, which I can use it on Android. I can use it on iOS. I can use it on the desktop, and that works pretty well. And I just really need very simple notes. I think for some people who want something more sophisticated, I think that Keep might be worth checking out, and certainly has some great features in terms of the transcription that it'll do. But I mean, I do think that there is sort of a legitimate. Google has introduced similar note-taking apps and things like that before, and killed those products. And so I would be
there's Google Notebook before.
Justifiably apprehensive about using Google's service.
And I do wish that it had some support for the S Pen. It doesn't have any support at all. So that I mean, if I'm taking a note, I'll typically take out my stylus and jot it down. So that'd be nice. Let's see, lots of questions on YouTube actually.
We have trains to catch.
We do. So let's take two more questions. Let's see. Have you heard of Google Glass? Yeah, we have heard of Google Glass.
That was one. Use your next one wisely, Tim.
Oh boy.
Have you heard of Google Glass? Yes.
Someone asked if we'd heard of Google Glass.
Yes. The thing that we were talking about.
Yeah, they must not think very much of us.
This may have been.
We were literally talking about it 10 minutes ago.
Okay. So Tass in chat is saying there was some commotion regarding the safety of Nintendo's 3DS, the use of 3D in the Nintendo 3DS. Will virtual reality suffer because of this?
Yeah. Well, it's gonna. Yeah. I mean, for a number of reasons. I mean, one, like anybody who's spent any significant amount of time with it knows that it messes with your brain. I mean, it really does. It does. It does.
That's a great way of putting it.
No, but it does. I mean, it affects your perception of things. But I would say that you should approach this the way that you would approach the 3DS or really any other gaming system. Like don't play it for 10 hours a day.
Moderation.
Get up and, walk around and
look
at something else.
The Valve devs in the video we filmed said that you should start with 10 minutes and then kind of build your way up over a week. And then they said that after a week, playing for an hour was okay.
You're literally tricking your brain.
And you are focusing on something that is about an inch away from your eyeballs, too. And though you do have lenses to kind of help make that easier, it's still not exactly great for your eyes. So I don't think it will be, I don't think that the 3DS really is bad for your eyes, but ultimately it can cause eye strain, just like any gaming can cause eye strain.
If you look at it
especially if you're sitting like this playing your 3DS as well.
Yeah, and certainly there's going to be parent groups, I think, there'll be a big to-do about this.
Kids, don't let your parents play Oculus Rift. I think that's the most important thing.
There you go. That's a good note to end on, I think.
All right, I think we will end on that so that Brian and I can catch our respective trains in respective different directions.
Yeah, see you in Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might see this guy in Boston. You might see this
Maybe.
guy in Albany. Might see that guy at his house.
You will not see me at my house.
Don't go to Peter's house.
Yeah, don't
won't
Do
be there.
not go to Peter's house. That was
This
not
has
an
actually
invitation.
happened to me.
Oh.
Where people have come by my house.
We'll get into that story next time. What happens
Yeah.
next? What happens? What happens when people show up at Peter's apartment?
Start getting real.
Well, the spoiler is someone tried to buy a watch. They like thought that they'd seen something. It was actually the first time it happened was when I was doing Gizmodo, and somebody came by the house and was like, "Hey, I saw this website where I thought I could buy this watch," and I'm like, "No, leave, go away."
Those are like those emails I get 10
Yeah.
times a day that are
Right.
like, I understand you're an aluminum supplier.
Right. Dear marketing manager, please forward this on to your requisition officer.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here at the Engadget Podcast for the week of March 18th. I hope you liked our new digs. Let us know how the audio quality was in this podcast. We are very thankful to Joe Pollicino for putting things together for us. And we hope that things sound better. And we will be back next week with more talk about
Tech.
gadgets,
Peter's
Gadgets.
home address.
battle
Yeah.
tech.
We'll be giving out my
Macintosh.
home address one letter at a
Oh,
time.
no, that's incentive.
You have to watch for the next
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
90 episodes.
See you next week.
Bye.